Amani Al-Khattatba is a Muslim American activist and the founder of MuslimGirl.com. She's pretty influential within her sphere. I tend not to agree with a lot of what she says, but I will outright say that I do agree with her that most Muslims are not terrorists and that Muslims are just people who should be judged on an individual basis like everyone else. That said, I caught a video of her on the YouTube channel Astronauts Wanted arguing that Islam is compatible with gender equality, and she ultimately does herself a major disservice. Fair warning, this is not a commentary on feminism. This is a video made in response to claims about Islam. Let's get into it.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how ignorant is the title of this episode? Like, can you be a Muslim feminist? Is it just really obvious?
I would say that it's a 10, except for the fact that so many people are unaware of how feminist Islam really is.
You just said that Islam is really feminist, which to me, I'm just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What? Because everything that I hear about Islam is that it is quite oppressive.
It has much less to do with the geography and more so to do with the principles of the religion itself.
Okay.
And what's interesting and what not many people know is that Islam literally founded the principles of gender equality that we call feminism today.
This claim is so far off in so many ways that one doesn't even have to argue about Islamic doctrine to be able to discredit it. I'll get to the doctrine of Islam soon enough, but first, let's discuss some basic history. Women in ancient Egypt, at least 2,000 or 3,000 years before Islam, were able to have jobs, be financially independent, represent themselves in court, marry and divorce as they please, and travel alone freely. There were even several female rulers in ancient Egypt across multiple dynasties. Even if it was established that Islamic societies in 7th century Arabia upheld rights for women, they still wouldn't be the first in the Middle East to do so. Plus, in order for Islam to provide the foundation of gender equality that we in secular countries uphold today, it needed to at least be a powerful influence for the establishment of women's rights around the world. But it wasn't. Women's suffrage, for instance, began to be established across the world with the women's rights movement in the 19th and 20th centuries, which was based primarily on secular ideas, not Islamic ones.
And it really was revolutionary for its time period when it was revealed in society, and it was because it was an equalizer between the genders, and it really just elevated women in a way that they weren't elevated in the pre-Islamic society of the Middle East before.
Again, even if we're generous and grant for the sake of argument that Islam was the first influence in Arabia to champion some women's rights and allow them to vote, to be financially independent, and to divorce their husbands, her claim can be disputed. If there really was a revolution toward affording women these rights, it was incredibly localized. Like I said a moment ago, it didn't become the foundation of gender equality that we uphold today. Let's say this revolution did happen, and every single Islamic society began upholding the rights previously mentioned. Along with that revolution would definitely come practices based on other teachings in the Quran and Hadith. Teachings like, women's inheritance should be half that of a man's. A woman's testimony in court is worth half as much as a man's. Men can have up to 4 wives, but women can only have 1 husband. Men can take female slaves and captives as sex slaves. A woman is less intelligent than a man. And a woman can't leave the house without her husband's permission. With every edict supposedly given in favor of gender equality, Islam gives another which firmly cements the oppression of women into Islamic practice. Even if Islamic societies got a head start in their progress toward gender equality, they reached their peak and halted at a place of still rampant sexism because of Islamic doctrine. Just looking at the world stage today, it's obvious that those societies have not progressed to the same extent as societies without Islam when it comes to gender equality. Now, I'm not saying that the birth of Islam actually spurred any kind of revolution for women's rights. I'm just demonstrating that one can make well-supported arguments against all these claims with just a basic understanding of history. You don't have to have an incredibly deep knowledge of Islamic theology in order to realize that these claims are nonsense.
One thing that's really cool and that not many people know is that Muslim women actually have a marital right to be sexually satisfied by their partner.
Yes!
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Literally, exactly, yeah. So that's like really cool because number one, Islam...
It's like I am owed an orgasm.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, so first of all, Islam acknowledges that sex can be had for pleasure instead of just for reproductive purposes. And then on top of that Muslim women are entitled to be just as pleased by their partner as men are.
In some interpretations, yeah. But also, when a husband calls his wife to bed and she refuses, and as a result, the husband spends the night in anger, then angels curse the wife all night till dawn. I'm sure it's really great as a woman to be sexually satisfied every time you're commanded to have sex regardless of whether or not you want to. The explicit rule that men have authority over their wives just makes this whole equal rights thing so much easier. For men.
What's cool about it is that, that's even a reason, a really significant reason to be able to file for divorce. So, yeah, if you're not hitting those O's, then you
divorce.
Yeah, exactly. You're out of the picture, so.
Well, if she's not satisfied, a woman can ask her husband for a divorce. See, the way it works in Islam is that a man divorces a wife, while a woman gets divorced by her husband. A woman can only ask her husband to divorce her. If the husband refuses, she has to take the matter to court and let the court decide. Meanwhile, as mentioned earlier, a woman's testimony in court is worth half as much as a man's, so... Oh, and does a woman still have that right if she's been subject to female genital mutilation like many women in the Muslim world have? That's undeniably an Islamic issue, so what's the deal here?
So you say that women can divorce their husband if they're not being satisfied, but I heard that in Sharia law, a woman can't divorce her husband.
Oh man, Sharia law. Okay. I think I'm gonna make a call here. Hey, Steve. Yeah, I'm working on a response video right now, and there's about to be some claims about Sharia law that need to be debunked. Would you mind helping me out here? Alright. Yeah, awesome. I figured you were way too British to actually say no, so... Alright, cool, thanks. See, I figure since this video probably won't be able to be monetized, I should at least collab with Steve to get some of his subscribers. Bring in his wonderful perspective on a complex issue. Yeah, so here's Rationality Rules to take a look at this video's claims about Sharia law.
Hello, Drew's crew. If you've never heard of me, then it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, and if you have, then, well, hi. So, Sharia law. Yeah. The chances of this video being monetized is indeed low, and unfortunately, I'm about to make it even more so.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
First of all, women are absolutely entitled to divorce within Islam, and Sharia law is not supposed to be oppressive towards women,
It's not
towards
supposed to
any
be, but-
minorities, nothing.
Okay, so there are two claims here. The first being that Muslim women can divorce their husbands, and the second being that Sharia law is not supposed to oppress minorities. Now, as far as I'm concerned, Drew's already dealt with the former, as sure, a Muslim wife can indeed divorce her husband, but imams will often prohibit her unless she has her husband's consent or proof of legitimate grounds, which, depending on the legal school, can include infidelity, physical and/or emotional abuse, financial straits, or sexual dysfunction. But on the other hand, if a husband wants to divorce one of his wives, he can do so without a cause and at any time other than when she's menstruating. How's that for equality? And as for the assertion that Sharia law is not supposed to oppress minorities, you've got to be kidding me. The Quran and the Hadith are absolutely saturated with edicts explicitly oppressing minorities, and that's why countries practicing Sharia law do exactly that. Here's Pew's world map representing Muslim population, and here's HDR's map of gender inequality. Now that's quite an overlap, isn't it? And here's the ILGA's world map of sexual inequality. Again, telling, isn't it? And here's a world map of blasphemy laws. That is, countries that punish minorities for saying anything against the status quo.
A lot of times we see governments basically hijack Sharia law and implement these really oppressive policies on their own people using it. Okay. And then we also see in the West kind of politicizing that term in order to assert that type of agenda in the Middle East or on another group of people.
Okay, I see what's going on here. Amani is committing a no true Scotsman fallacy. The reason she can say that Sharia law enhances women and protects minorities is because she's disregarding all other interpretations but her own. Interpretations, I might add, that have more scriptural justification. We see this type of apologetics in every religion, and this is no different. It's similar to how some Christians will accept evolution but say that Christians that don't accept it aren't real Christians. But then again, this isn't a perfect comparison, because while most Christians accept evolution, most Muslims do not consider women equal to men. Oh, and as for the accusation that the West is
politicizing that term in order to assert that type of agenda in the Middle East or on another group of people,
we need only look at the aforementioned world maps to show that this isn't the case. The East is, at large, oppressive, and that's a statement of fact, not opinion.
A lot of times we see modern day applications of Islam being totally torn away from the actual principles that are founding the religion. The policies are not supposed to be stoning gay people. Actually, the Prophet Muhammad himself had a really long record of being very protective of minorities that are ostracized by their societies.
And again, this is the no true Scotsman. The fact of the matter is that the Quran and the Hadith contain countless violent edicts against minorities and many oppressive acts from Muhammad, and that's why the vast majority of Muslims don't share Amani's views. Anyhow, with that, I'll bid you farewell and send you back to Drew. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for coming on, Steve. To anyone who hasn't yet seen it, I also made an appearance on Rationality Rules in a video uploaded concurrent with this one, so make sure and check that out after this. Okay, back to the video at hand.
Islam is being hijacked both by non-Muslims and Muslims to assert like certain political agendas, ones that can be oppressive towards women. And one thing that is a personal pet peeve of mine is the fact that a lot of the fatwas, which are the interpretations of Islamic law, are issued by male sheikhs, right? So of course, a sheikh is a religious leader, and usually a male religious leader. And when that happens, of course, these fatwas are going to be issued confined within this very, very patriarchal mindset.
Oh, so this is her explanation for why Islam is so patriarchal and oppressive to women. She's made it very clear that she thinks Islamic practice today is tainted, that it isn't being done correctly. So this whole thing boils down to her claiming that what is essentially mainstream Islam is based on sexist misinterpretations of the original doctrine. The point that her interpretation is so far in the minority doesn't help her case that Islam in its true form promotes gender equality. If a teaching intends to promote equality, but the vast majority of people who encounter it understand it to promote inequality, the teaching, for the most part, promotes inequality. Now, when the author of that lesson is known to be fallible, we can most reasonably say that the teaching was poorly worded, and the intent of the author was not reflected well. But when the author is supposedly omniscient, it's a different story. More on that in a minute.
For us, like at Muslim Girl, for example, we are really encouraging of that type of autonomy with the way that you practice your religion, with the way that you interpret it. And one thing that's really unique to Islam is the fact that we don't have like a middleman between you and God. Because we believe that, like, even imams and sheikhs, that's not their purpose. We believe that everyone has, like, a direct connection with God and their religion. And as such, it's totally all right. To be able to, like, read something and be like, okay, well, this is how I believe this is going to be implemented within my life, instead of relying on the same old people for decades telling us, like, how to be able to practice it.
In case you're wondering, no, this minimal religious hierarchy isn't unique to Islam. Those in the Baptist church I grew up in used to make this point all the time in an effort to validate the denomination. A lot of Protestants actually think this way. Also, her point about Islam being open to personal interpretation undermines her entire point once again. She said earlier that true original Islamic principles promote equality. She also said that those who don't promote equality in their practice aren't holding to the original principles, that they've got the wrong idea about Islam. Further, she said a lot of misinterpretation is due to male leaders' patriarchal bias. These earlier claims do not fit with the one she just made. If Islamic practice is open for personal interpretation, why are all those male sheikhs wrong, but she's right? How are others mistaken about their interpretations and she's not? How, in a system meant to be interpreted subjectively, can one claim to know its objective truth? She builds up her points about the true interpretation of Islam in order to discredit those she disagrees with, but as soon as she attempts to justify her deviation from the norm, she uses a line of reasoning that her detractors could just as easily use as well. So much effort put forward, only to refute herself. She inadvertently brings up an interesting idea, though. Do you think that perhaps the meaning of the Quran and Hadith are always interpreted subjectively, like literally all other literature in existence? What if all interpretation is subject to bias? If you're a male Muslim leader, it's patriarchal, and if you're a Muslim feminist, it's toward elevating women. Well, this is the nature of literary interpretation. This is the way it is with all texts written by mankind.
Any government or institution that is acting out against minorities or against women in the name of Islam, would you say that they're not Muslim?
I wouldn't say that they're not Muslim. I'm not God to be able to like judge, you know. I feel like anyone that identifies as Muslim can say that they're Muslim, but I would say that they're very adjacent to Muslim principles.
I think that she misspoke here when she said adjacent. I think she meant that they're behaving contrary to Muslim principles. So that's what I'm responding to here. Once again, she references true Muslim principles. The issue is whether she attests to a true interpretation of Islam or defends subjective interpretation, she just digs a deeper hole for herself. If there is a true interpretation of the Quran, but people disagree about what that is, it didn't communicate its points clearly enough to be properly understood. All literature has that problem, you might say. Yes, that's because it's impossible for a fallible author to overcome that completely, but an all-knowing, all-powerful author could. So the author of the Quran and originator of Islam either couldn't or didn't want to. They're either flawed or purposely misleading people. On the flip side, if Islam is meant to be understood and applied subjectively, it has no one true meaning. It can't be shown to contain objective truth. If that's the case, its truth is no greater than that of any other religions. So why defend it? Why practice it? Why believe it at all? Thanks for watching. I've been Drew of Genetically Modified Skeptic. Remember to check out my collab with Rationality Rules, link in the description and the comments. Praise be unto Adam, my top patron and personal Lord and Savior, for making this video possible. Go ahead and subscribe, check out my Patreon, follow me on Twitter and Facebook at GM Skeptic, and until next time, stay skeptical.